Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Childless Not by Choice, where my mission is to recognize and speak to the broken hearts of childless not by choice women and men around the world. Civilla Morgan here. I am spreading the great news that we can live a joyful, relevant, and fulfilled life, although we could not, did not have the children we so wanted. As we continue on here with episode 94, I would like to thank my Patreon contributors. I have two now. Patreon contributors are those who have taken an interest in my platform, whether they fit the childless not by choice demographic or not. They have decided to contribute a certain dollar amount on a regular basis to help fund my dream of creating awareness and conversation for the childless not by choice community globally. So be sure to click the Patreon link for details, and that link is right there in the show notes. It's patreon.com/childless not by choice. I'd like to thank Jordan Morgan, who has been a long-time patron. Thank you for your patronage, Jordan Morgan. And I would like to thank new patron Ivy Calhoun for your patronage. Ivy, it's awesome to have you on board. I so appreciate your monthly gift towards the platform, and it's not taken lightly at all. So thank you very much, Jordan Morgan and Ivy Calhoun. It is appreciated. Well, today for episode 94, we have a guest. That means I have an interview. It's not just me today. So I know a lot of you love the interview formats, and very happy to have Mrs. Michelle Link on with us today. Michelle says in her bio that as the last of their six children are now grown, Michelle and her husband of 29 years have opted to continue the energy and chaos of family in their home by adopting dogs. Training their three Goldendoodles, so cute and curly, has become Michelle's passion, which ultimately culminated in the therapy dog certification of their girl, Murphy. Michelle volunteers with Murphy in several capacities as a therapy dog team, but she is also inspired to educate and encourage others, sharing the life-changing benefits she's discovered in her personal relationship with Murphy. Good morning, Michelle. It is morning. It's a Saturday morning. Thank you so much for being with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I'm so excited to be here with you. I always love to talk about dogs.
Okay, I'm so glad that you were able to make it out this Saturday morning, and we're going to jump right into the interview here. We just have a few questions here, and I want to just basically, I'm going to be educated on this as well, but educate those out there who are listening who may not know what therapy and certification of dogs is all about. And we're even going to talk about how dogs are, and pets in general, are a great support for those of us who are childless, not by choice. So the
Yes.
first question that I have here is the first thing I think I asked you in our pre-interview conversation was, what type of dog is Murphy? And you said that Murphy is a golden doodle.
That's
So,
right. Murphy's mother was a golden retriever, a red golden retriever named Rusty, and her father was a white poodle named Tony. And
okay.
yeah, the owners called him Tony Macaroni. And when I saw a picture of him, I could see why, because he's very curly, very curly
Mm.
white poodle. But anyway, Murphy's a beautiful, as I call her, my little Irish redhead. She's just a beautiful apricot color with a touch of white on her chest.
And we're going to be posting pictures of Michelle and Murphy. So be sure to, when you check out the episode, to check out the pictures. We'll be posting some pictures of them. So the other question that I have here is, does it matter the type of dog when you're talking about training and certification?
It does not. I learned a lot through this process with Murphy. And, really, we talk about training dogs. It's a lot about training people. We hired a dog trainer who came here to the house to show me how to train Murphy, because I knew her obedience training would be very important since I intended her for therapy work. In one of our sessions, the trainer, he would always bring his German Shepherd with him. And he did that purposely as a distraction for Murphy so that she could practice obedience, even with the distraction and temptation of this beautiful, fun German Shepherd about. But anyway, he mentioned that any dog can be trained to do anything. And I do believe that. And some dogs are easier to train. They might, have, more of a energy or a purpose to please and bond with humans as opposed to others. So it might take longer to train certain dogs than others, but no, it does not matter what type of dog that you would have for companionship. You just want to bond with that dog through training.
Okay, awesome. That's great information. Another thing that I learned from you in our pre-interview conversation was that there is a difference between a prescribed emotional support dog and a certified dog. So can you tell us
Yes,
the
there is a big difference, and I'm always happy to make this clarification. As a matter of fact, Murphy and I have gone on speaking engagements to share information like this because it's with the popularity of companion pets and with them traveling and participating in people's lives more and more, there's a need for this clarification. So I just want to say, we have these three Goldendoodles. So there's Murphy, who is my emotional support animal, and she's also certified for therapy work. And as an emotional support animal and certified for therapy work, Murphy is not entitled to any protection by the American Disabilities Act. That is reserved strictly for service dogs. So, the baseline animal that you would have is a pet. It's a pet or a companion. There's no certification there other than whatever your county, legislation is about that. And through a licensed mental health
Mhm.
counselor, you can be prescribed an emotional support animal. So, not a medical doctor, but a licensed mental health counselor or a psychologist or psychiatrist. And so that emotional support animal fills the gap for, emotional disorders like depression, anxiety. And Murphy was certified for that for me, and I can talk more about that. Now, as a therapy dog, Murphy went through basic obedience training and was required to achieve a Canine Good Citizen award or accomplishment. And a Canine Good Citizen is a test of a series of obedience, such as heeling on a leash, stay, come, leave it, that type of thing, so that the dog is prepared to be in any kind of a public setting with excellent obedience. And then from there, after getting her Canine Good Citizen, there's several entities that you could get certified through, but we chose Therapy Dogs International, and they are the largest therapy team organization. And there we had to be prepared to have Murphy be around wheelchairs, walkers. She had to be able to walk away from, tempting dog treats that were laying on the floor, so that if she's in a facility and, you can imagine
Mhm.
if there's medication that's dropped on the floor or something like that, she needs to be protected from that. Or,
Oh.
the lunch tray cart goes by, or, dropping of equipment, if she's startled, she cannot react to that. So anyway, so for her therapy dog certification,
Mhm.
that is what she had to go to. And with that therapy dog certification, that entitles Murphy and I to go into facilities such as nursing homes, hospitals, schools, assisted living facilities. And her sole purpose is just to provide that companionship for the residents and patients in those facilities. So again, this doesn't mean that I could take Murphy with me to the grocery store or to a restaurant or to the movies. That is not what she is certified to do. So that's a therapy dog. And then that leaves us with a service dog or service animal. And that dog performs a specific
Mhm.
service to supplement a person's disability. So, for example, the most obvious and well known service dog would be a seeing eye dog. We often see a lot of those are German shepherds. So, we often see a blind person accompanied by
Mhm.
a seeing eye dog. This could be a person who has mobility issues where a dog will open the door, will just assist in various ways, retrieve paperwork from a high counter in a medical office, or as the person is traveling. It can also be a dog who is trained to detect insulin levels in a diabetic, or certain diagnostic levels for people who are prone to epileptic seizures, so that the dog can alert their human that this is coming and that they should take medication to prevent it. So those type of service animals are protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act, meaning they can accompany them anywhere they go, the grocery store, a hotel, a restaurant, on an airplane, etc. So I hope that kind of helps, gives clarification.
And it definitely does. I believe in the beginning of your explanation, you touched on a portion of the next part of the question, which is the companion pet, which is, I think I had in here, and then what is the difference between a companion pet and an emotional support animal and a service dog? So you basically did break all of that down. So that's appreciated. And that helps people with, well, if they're paying attention, differentiating between the type of dog. And I know in some cases they don't like those particular dogs to be petted, for instance. They don't want you to pet the animal because the animal is working.
Correct. And that would be the service dog who's providing that service. And I will say for Murphy, when I have her out and about
Right.
with me at locations, generally most people are pretty well educated about that and ask if they can pet her. And then I explain, of course, that she is a therapy dog. And while she's working as a therapy dog, that is her
Mm.
job, to behave compliantly and, be affectionate and
Hmm.
ready for petting and companionship.
Okay, awesome. That's great information. And as we move on here, I wonder too, and I think we talked about this a little bit in our pre-interview conversation, other than your own experiences with pets, just so, and if you have any links to anything, I'll put them in the show notes. Are you aware of any studies that support the benefits of a relationship with a pet?
Yeah, there are many studies about this. And just as an example, the American Journal of Critical Care conducted a study of 12-minute visits with therapy dogs with patients that were hospitalized with heart failure. And it proved that the visit improved cardiopulmonary pressures,
Mm-hmm.
neurohormone levels, and anxiety in those patients that were hospitalized. So, and there's many studies about the affection and companionship of a dog improving these healing factors in a person's physiology. Also, Massachusetts General Hospital research study gathered women that had at least one child, aged 2 and 10, who also had a pet dog in the house for at least 2 years. And there were 2 sessions. So the first in-home session included having a questionnaire that was related to the relationship between both the child and their dog, and they photographed the child and the dog in these women's homes. And then they had a special type of
Mm-hmm.
MRI, called an fMRI, that showed that while looking at pictures of both their children and dogs separately, both
Mm-hmm.
times the same levels of oxytocin were released in their brain. And oxytocin is involved in pair bonding and the maternal attachment. So I just that was reinforcing what I've already
Mm-hmm.
come to know, is that the bonding ability between a human and a dog is a real thing. And I feel that sometimes I see, especially online, people try to dispute that or put that down and say, stop saying that, your dog is your child, or stop referring to yourself as a fur mom or a fur baby mom. And I just think that those folks
Mm-hmm.
are misguided and have no platform to speak from on that. And everyone's journey is different. And so I don't want to imply that everyone loves dogs or would benefit from a relationship. Not everyone's an animal person. But for those that are, struggling in any way emotionally, I feel it's a great thing to consider, the companionship of a pet. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be prescribed by a licensed mental health counselor just to bring a companion animal into your home. You just need the prescription for the emotional support animal if you want that dog to travel with you or accompany you to a hotel room or something while you're traveling.
Well, you kind of touched on one of my next questions because I have a couple more questions here, and one of them is, and so you have a chance to elaborate on what you were just saying if you'd like. does speak to us about the fact that there is value in having quote unquote fur babies, and that doing so does not diminish or minimize those with pets who happen not to have children.
Exactly. Yeah, we've always had pets, and as you read in my bio, we have 6 total children. So we have a large chaotic family. 3 of those are my stepchildren, and then 3 of those are the boys that my husband and I have had through the years, and of course they're all grown now, and we're just about ready to have an empty nest. So while I don't identify personally with being childless not by choice and having had a large family, I can identify with other types of heartache in life. And I've always been a person, as an adult who's been diagnosed with clinical depression. And I've been fortunate that through medication and mental health counseling and personal lifestyle choices, I've been able to manage that and keep that at bay. And in 2016, our family just went through a series of extraordinary hardships that included, a near business bankruptcy, some deaths in the family, including a suicide of our grandson. So those events changed me. And I was always very active and busy in the care of my parents. I would often fly to Pennsylvania to
Mhm.
see my parents. One is in an Alzheimer's community, and my dad is there as well in an independent living facility. But I just became overwhelmed with anxiety, sometimes triggered, sometimes not. And at this time, I had Murphy trained for therapy work. And my husband, I just talked about, he said, if you could take Murphy with you when you travel alone, I wonder if that would help. So we actually spoke with a licensed mental health counselor who interviewed me, very in a very detailed manner. And she determined that, yes, I would benefit from an emotional support animal in Murphy coming along with me to accompany me. And I will say it does alleviate anxiety. So while, again, I don't identify with being childless, not by choice, I do have other pains and challenges in life that Murphy and the relationship with all my dogs has been able to temper and comfort. And I would like to encourage those, struggling with the challenge of childless not by choice to consider a companion animal in your life to build relationship and, have that additional sense of purpose in your life. There's many purposes in your life, but a pet does give you that relationship and sense of purpose.
I totally agree. And I've said, on several episodes, I say it all the time that, being childless not by
Yeah.
choice is traumatic. It can be traumatic. And depending on where in the world we live, it can be worse than traumatic because we just have to deal with society's expectations, and when we're not
Mm.
able to have those children, what society
Oh.
does to us, treating us like second class citizens, doing and saying passive aggressive things to make us feel worse than we already do, etc., or trying to make us feel worse than we already do. But I always say that, almost everyone on this planet is going to suffer something, and almost everyone is suffering some type of trauma. It just so happens that the one we deal with on this platform is being childless not by choice, but there are other types of trauma out there. And I just appreciate the way you so eloquently explained your trauma and how you dealt with it, and how important pets and fur babies are regardless of the trauma. So I appreciate you just being able to talk to us from that level. I'm sure the listeners appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. I will say maybe not so much related to the therapy dog aspect, but as you and I have discussed before, you and I came to know each other. So just out of interest and support of this person that I'm endeared to, Civilla, I'm interested in this podcast, even though the title does not personally apply to me. But I really have encouraged several people, even if they don't tune in all the time, to at least tune into some episodes and be aware of the concept. Because,
Right.
if you're not aware of the issue of childless not by choice, if you don't have a sensitivity to that, we make an innocent statement like, my boys are all at the ages where kids are, dating or getting married. And then, I hear people making comments, and I could have easily made this comment a few years ago to say, oh, now you're married. Now it's time for the babies. And you're kind of saying that in a joking, teasing way. And I just will say, I just have a little check in my soul about that. And I just think, well,
Hmm.
if that's what they want, and hopefully that's what their journey allows, but it's not something they need to hear. Right. And it's not something we might not even be aware of what their health circumstances are, or, as far as that. So
It's
it's a
not a
very
guarantee.
personal
Right.
thing. And anyway, I appreciate the awareness to be sensitive that everyone's journey is different, and
Right.
we don't need to contribute to the pain of that, you know, unintentionally, and certainly not intentionally.
Right. And so that's where the awareness creation comes in. And yes, we have talked before about the fact that you do listen, and I so appreciate it, because when I mentioned that there are women out there who are married and have children and
Yes.
grandchildren who listen to the show, you're one of the people I'm talking about, because you've told me on several occasions that you listen. So I do appreciate your listening and for helping me get the word out, and for, just letting me know how the podcast has helped you with how you process commentary. I have one more question, and I think you kind of touched on it, but if again you want to elaborate, that's fine. But my last question was, when did you personally realize the healing value of a relationship with dogs? And I guess you kind of touched on it, but if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I think that when my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and it became time to put her in an assisted living facility, when my father and I walked into that secured area, we were greeted
That's
by this little black and white dog named Franklin. And I just immediately thought that was the neatest thing. And I've always been an animal lover, but this is a resident dog, Franklin, who stays there and, goes room to room and just has free run of this secured memory care unit. And I was thinking, this was at a time in my life too, where again, the empty nest syndrome was impending. And we were talking about getting a dog of our own as opposed to, something that the kids were asking for. And it was just that day that I thought, I am going to train our next dog to do therapy work so I can do this. So that was my initial awareness of a therapy dog and the possibility. And then, following as I was doing this process of Murphy bringing joy and comfort and companionship to patients and residents at facilities, going through our own traumas, was when I became aware of the concept of an emotional support animal, and, did some research on that. So that's when I benefited personally having Murphy as play that role in my life. So she's unique in having a dual role of being a certified therapy dog, but also a prescribed emotional support animal for me. There is one other thing I'd like to sort of elaborate on. If you're childless not by choice and listening, and this has, inspired you to, maybe open your home and adopt an animal, a dog or a cat, I do want to encourage, it doesn't happen magically. We often see this in the movies where a family adopts a dog or a dog wanders in off the streets. And, I always say there's always the obligatory bathtub scene where the dog jumps out of the tub and has, bubbles all over the place. And, it's a big laugh fest. But it requires training to build that relationship with your pet. A dog is happiest if they have a job. They're different than a child. A child is of their own
Hmm.
free will, of their own free mind, but a dog or a cat expects you to do the thinking for them. They are there to please you. So if you don't give them direction, they're going to get into mischief. And it's hard to feel companionship and affection for a dog who is, chronically misbehaving. So that relationship does not automatically happen. It needs to be built with
Hmm.
time and commitment and consistency and training. And to that end, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just, as you were saying that, I was just thinking, and I don't know if we talked about this, but we kind of probably did, as we talked about which dogs are best for therapy and certification, etc. But it just occurred to me as you said that the training is not going to happen magically and the dog is not going to obey magically, that there are some dog breeds that get a bad rap, and I'm not saying that they are necessarily right. I think
Yeah,
overall, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think overall any dog breed, and I'm thinking about like maybe a mastiff or what's the name of that other dog that
correct.
gets such a bad rap, pit bulls. It all comes down to training, because the pit bulls get a bad rap because they're trained incorrectly, and a lot of times on purpose incorrectly, where if they were correctly trained they would be fine. So I just thought about that as you were saying that.
Right. And no, it's true. And the irony about pit bulls is that by nature, they're very human oriented. They're very people and affection oriented, even though they're, 80, 100 pounds and all muscle. They are a gentle dog. Those dogs have been trained because of the way they're structured. They have strength in their jaw and they're very muscular. So people who abuse them, train them for the things that they've become stereotyped for. But the breed pit bull in itself is actually a very, otherwise, a gentle, trainable breed. And I will share this with you. I love dogs in general. And so right now I'm babysitting two dogs. I've got a couple extra dogs in addition to the three Goldendoodles, if you can believe it. And you talk about training, because listen to how quiet my house is right now. I have laid down the law that everybody needs to be quiet while we're on this podcast. So anyway, I have a schnauzer here, but I also just got dropped off a 60-pound, 6-month old English bulldog.
60 pounds in 6 months?
Yes. And he is
Right.
a brick. He's not all that big. He would, just a little bigger than your
Oh.
lap, but he's so solid. So, let me tell you, this dog put me on my knee in the driveway the other day from tugging the leash, pulled me right
Wow.
over. And well, he needs training. So, guess what? He doesn't, here at my house, he does not get to eat before he sits and waits. So, it took us 30 minutes last night because he just thinks there's food on the floor. That's his to walk over. But
Oh my
it
goodness.
took 30 minutes to get him to sit
Yeah.
and wait for a command. But when we're talking about different breeds, and I say any of them can be trained, this is necessary. And it's much better to train this dog while he's 6 months and 60 pounds than it would be to wait till he's over 100 pounds. And you can start to train them at any age. Like Murphy, for
Mm,
example, we had her in obedience training at eight
yeah.
weeks old. So as a 10-week-old puppy, she could, sit and lay down. And the SPCA has a training program called There Are No Free Rides, or There's No Free Lunches. And that just basically means nothing happens for my dogs without them having to perform for that. So if we're going to go out the front door to go outside, they have to sit before I open the door. And when it's time to come back in the house and to go back
Oh.
inside, they have to sit before I'll open the door to let them in. It's meal time. I'll either give them a sit command or a down command. Before I pet them, I say sit, so that they can't
Mm,
just come over and demand to be petted. And that might sound strict, but it's almost subconscious now. It's just the language we speak, but it's built our relationship because they want to please me. They want to do well. They are comfortable having that job to do, which is what I tell them to do, and then they are
hmm.
rewarded with, whatever the task is at hand, whether that's, putting on their leash, they have to sit and wait for that, or if they want their leash taken off, they have to sit and wait for that. And I
Mm.
just say this again to reinforce that if you're considering getting a pet and you don't already have one, you don't want to do that on impulse. You want to understand the great responsibility it is. And then you need to know that the relationship will be all the better the more time you spend on training that dog and holding them accountable to obedient behavior.
And now you just made me think of something else. Kind but firm boundaries, because you're creating boundaries with these animals that are, they, as you said, they may sound strict, but boundaries help for a better relationship, whether it's between a dog and its animal or between human beings. So that's a great
Exactly. And I will say, too, so we had a friend come in the back door this morning, and, this is a challenge at our house. If anybody new comes in, everyone's barking. It's very embarrassing, and it lasts about a minute. We're trying to work through that. It's a really tough behavior to break, but they do settle down. But anyway, I just want them well trained because we do have relationship with humans. You want to if you're bringing an animal into your household, you don't want
Hmm.
to create a boundary between yourself and your other relationships and family members
Hmm.
and friendships. That's another reason why you want a well trained dog. And yes, there are boundaries. Now, our dogs are allowed
Right.
to be on the furniture. They sleep with us, but they also can sleep in their crate. If I want them to or need them to, they just do as I ask them to do. They don't go beyond those boundaries. So that is important. And you can see too, as I'm talking about, raising these dogs and training them and caring for them,
Hmm.
how someone childless not by choice could benefit from that companionship. And you could see where it's easy to develop a concept
Hmm.
of, being a dog mom or a dog dad, or, considering them fur babies, because we spend, so much time with them and build relationship with them. And, we communicate with them. If I'm not feeling well, or if
Hmm.
I'm challenged or struggling, I'm telling you, Murphy's right there in my lap. She senses my emotions. Yes, there's real relationship there. We've had a friend whose wife passed recently, and he was here for dinner on Tuesday night, and Murphy was right there in the love seat with him, just
Hmm.
providing comfort and companionship. There were
Distress.
several of us
Hmm.
in the room, but she sensed
Wow.
that, he would be having some difficulty now, and she was such a beautiful source of comfort to him. So again, I could reiterate that over and over, but if anyone wants to minimize the relationship or say, oh, it's not the same as having children, they just don't have a ground to stand on that. I don't know if they're trying to make themselves a better parent or superior or what, but there's just
Hmm.
no foundation for that type of attitude.
Awesome, awesome word. And I appreciate you saying that. And I appreciate you being on today. And just as we close out here, I just wonder if you have any closing. You're speaking to the world. So, and you have been speaking to the world. So, anything that you'd like to reiterate? No pressure. Anything you'd like to, any final words or anything you'd like to reiterate before we close out today's episode?
I think that I would just, summarize it all by saying that if you're having any challenge in your life, whether that's the struggle of being childless not by choice, or, any other emotional or chronic challenges in your life, do consider adopting a pet for that companionship. And when you do so, make sure that you take the proper steps and educate yourself that the dog is well trained so that you can enjoy the dog and the world can enjoy that dog or pet with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Michelle, thank you so very much for your time today. I got so much information and encouragement out of this, and I know that each listener will as well. And I just want to let you guys know that if you want to contact or follow Michelle Link, you can just go to therapyteammurphy@mail.com. Therapyteammurphy@mail.com or Instagram at therapyteammurphy. And those are the two ways to contact or to follow the team. As and you'll see lots of great, wonderful pictures. And remember, there'll be pictures in the show notes, and also as I'm posting and reposting all over social media and on the website, we will have pictures posted all over the place. So thanks again, Michelle. And if you guys have any questions for me, remember, just email me, Civilla@civillamorgan.com, or message me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Give me 24 to 48 hours to respond. And once again, thanks for listening. Have a great one. Bye.